Alright, we're back with a second set of visuals here. This time we're going to concentrate on some of the political things that are happening during this era of industrialization and immigration. The most important figure politically of this age is a man named Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt is the fellow you see on the left in this picture. Teddy Roosevelt will become president in 1901. He becomes president when William McKinley is assassinated. Teddy Roosevelt was his vice president. He will be the youngest man to have the presidency up till that point. Teddy Roosevelt is significant because he is an example, or what people point to usually when they look for the first modern president. Teddy Roosevelt really has a huge part to play in making the presidency the face of the American government. He's going to do this through a variety of means. He was an extremely energetic man. He was someone who was always on the go, very outdoorsy. He is the president that's going to do the most for national parks. The man that he's pictured with here, John Muir, is an environmentalist who becomes a friend of Teddy Roosevelt to help kind of expose him to the importance of preserving nature as it's out there. Teddy Roosevelt also was a strong foreign policy president. He sends the U.S. Navy on a tour when he becomes president of the United States around the world. Our Navy at the time was the best in the world, and he wanted the world to see that. Sending a message, he said about foreign policy to speak softly and carry a big stick. But he wanted people to know that we wouldn't start trouble, but that we would be there, or we would have a response to any kind of trouble that was started. Famous story about Teddy Roosevelt, obviously he is the namesake of the teddy bear. He was a big hunter, and once when he was out hunting, he came across a teddy bear, and it was a teddy bear. He came across a bear, and he was getting ready to shoot this bear, and then two cubs come out of the woods. It was a mama bear. Teddy doesn't shoot it and doesn't let anybody in his party shoot it, and so when the story gets told, they start to sell Teddy's bear in the toy shops, and then eventually it gets shortened. Teddy Roosevelt is known for being a trust buster. He was very concerned when he becomes president about the power of big business, and so he used the power of the government to break up some of the big companies of the day in an effort to keep things competitive, and so he gets a reputation that way of being somebody who wasn't afraid to take on those big interests. We already talked a little bit in our election presentations, and we'll see him again in World War I. But in 1908, he makes the decision that he's not going to run for president, following George Washington's tradition of 2 terms, and so he leaves the presidency, and we'll see what the kind of the after effect of that is. Like I said, when we get to World War I and have an opportunity to talk about that. Our next one here is a monopoly board. The monopoly board represents this idea of monopolies in the U.S. government at this time. Teddy Roosevelt thought that these were a great danger to the American people. Monopoly is an economic term. It means when one person or company controls the majority of a product. Gave you an example in the first set of these, the John D. Rockefeller and his Standard Oil Company controlling almost 90% of the oil in the country. Monopolies are not good for consumers, and so our government has passed laws to allow us to break up monopolies. And this is something that's still very relevant today. Microsoft, within the last 10 or 15 years, has been taken to court as a possible monopoly in a couple of different ways. But basically the idea was that if we can break this company up into smaller companies, there'll be more competition. And it makes sense, right? If there's only one restaurant or one gas station or one phone company in town, those people can charge more for their services, because if you don't want to work with them, you have to leave the area. And so the idea here is we want competition between these groups to help encourage prices to remain low, making things good for consumers. This is also an era where we see the government stepping in to fight for the common man in some interesting ways. One of these is through labor unions. That's what this visual represents, is the idea of labor unions. And what labor unions were doing is, as industrialization was happening, like I said before, these factories weren't very safe places to work. If you got injured, they'd really just toss you to the side and go find somebody to come work that wasn't injured. And so the workers start to bond together to unionize. Basically, a union wants three things. They want safer working conditions, which is something that definitely benefited people in this time period. More pay, so making those jobs better paying, and then a shorter work week. We have labor unions to thank for the 8-hour workday, the 40-hour work week, overtime, things like that that we kind of take for granted today, but there were rights that were fought for in sometimes some violent altercations, as obviously factory owners, industry magnates don't like this idea of unions, because they don't want to pay those additional dollars if they don't have to, and so there's a lot that will go on between those two groups. But you really start to see those step up really as part of this next group, which is the progressive movement. The progressives don't ever become their own political party. They probably come to more closely align themselves with the Democrats, but the progressives in this era were very much about giving power back to the people. Probably the biggest thing the progressives accomplish during this period of time is the direct election of senators. The 17th Amendment, they'll change the Constitution to make senators answerable to the people that they're representing. And so this will be the first time they'll be able to represent that way. Famous progressive leaders, William Jennings Bryan is one who you're going to see as we do a little something on the Wizard of Oz later. And he is one that he runs for president a couple of different times, never wins, but is kind of the champion of this cause. And so we're going to see a lot of different things that the progressives do. Again, they're going to work with labor unions for safer working conditions. Ending child labor was a big thing that progressives were involved in. And so kind of like almost a third political party, but like I said, aligning more closely with Democrats. Probably if you're going to point to a progressive president, Woodrow Wilson's maybe the closest that we've gotten with that particular idea. But again, just a group who was trying to speak for or be a voice for the more common man in the United States at a time when, like I said, those guys we were seeing with the industrialists, people with a lot of money and power obviously had the influence, and it's returning a little bit of that back to the people.